Hey everyone, Season 12 of Diablo 4 is just around the corner. We have a new theme waiting for us, kill streaks, a lot of encounters with the Butcher, and a content, the scale of which we can only guess at indirectly, for example from partial leaks. But today's video isn't about any specific season. It's about what happens when a season ends. If this is your first time moving from one season to another, you probably have a lot of questions. Where will everything I worked so hard to farm go? What will happen to my characters? Where will all my progress and accumulated experience go? How do you know when a season is ending? When does the next season start and why should I even play it? In this video we will break down all the details of the transition so you don't have these questions again. New off here. Let's go. The first and most important piece of advice, which I have already given in many other videos, is simply enjoy the game. There is always a lot of noise around every new season, both negative and positive. It does not matter how good or bad something looks at first. There are always details. For example, right before Season 12, there was a glitch that, with certain manipulations, allowed access to the seasonal journey objective lists. That means what was announced before and during the PTR is not the full list of features for the upcoming season. So if you watch previews or play on the PTR yourself, do not rush to conclusions. The experience on the PTR and the experience at live launch are two very different things. I clearly remember Season 11. When the PTR came out, everyone was saying Diablo was dead and that the seasonal theme made no sense. But once the season actually launched and people logged in just to see how bad it was, it turned out to be the most popular season in at least the past year. My opinion is simple. Season 11 was not designed for the human nervous system if you are a competitive player. If you are interested, I explained all the details in a separate video. But it wasn't just about the double aspect system. It was also about the rework of items and the entire crafting system. Jumping ahead a little, here is an immediate answer to one of your questions. What happens to the loot? It gets transferred from the season to the Eternal Realm along with your character. But there is a catch. After a rework of items or the crafting system, the following happens. First, items become weaker because their item power is forcibly reduced, from 800 down to 540. This applies to legendary and mythic items. After a rework, your old gear from previous seasons basically turns into a pumpkin. Second, those old items cannot be modified at the occultist or the blacksmith. They are only usable as starting gear in the Eternal Realm. I will talk about that in a moment. Now, to finish the point about PTR impressions, they are incomplete. In reality, we do not know the full list of final changes, and based on past experience, changes and additions between the PTR and the final seasonal patch notes can be significant. Even the final patch notes, which Blizzard usually publishes 3 to 8 days before the season, are not always complete or fully accurate. Season 11 patch notes are still fresh in memory. Some details were simply wrong, including pit availability from level 10 and certain legendary drop information. The point is simple. Everything can change. Not everything is complete or correct. The real picture becomes clear only when you actually play the season. When is the end of the season? A common question is how to know exactly how much time is left. Many players look at the timer in the reliquary and see something like 13 days. Is that accurate? In most cases, yes. In Season 11, access to the reliquary closed and a couple of days later the new season started. That is standard practice. Season 12 is expected to start on March 10th. On March 5th, the developers will host a stream and show the new class, the Warlock. It makes sense for the season to launch shortly after that, within about 5 days. After every preseason stream, once it ends, the final patch notes are published. And as I said earlier, patch notes usually go live about 5 days before the season starts. What will happen to my character at the end of the season? Okay, let's move on to the main thing, what everyone is worried about. I have so much cool gear, mythics, runes, and gold. I invested so much into my character. What do I get in the new season? Brace yourselves, but the answer will most likely disappoint you. Nothing. It sounds harsh, but it's the truth. You don't transfer anything to the new season. Boss summoning materials, equipment, golden gems, runes, experience, and Paragon levels. Everything stays with your character in the Eternal Realm. Everything you earned while playing in the season will remain in the past season, or more precisely after it ends, in the Eternal Realm. The only things that carry over with you are cosmetic items and your clan. In some games, it's not your account that joins a clan, but a specific character. But in Diablo 4, that's not the case. Clan membership is shared by all characters on your account regardless of the game mode, season or Eternal Realm, softcore or hardcore. This doesn't affect the clan at all. The mechanics of transferring to the Eternal Realm. Let's look at how this works in practice. When a season ends, your seasonal characters are moved to the so-called Eternal Realm, where all your old heroes from past seasons are located. You might suddenly see a character with Paragon 300 in the Eternal Realm, even if you did not reach that in a single season. This happens because experience is summed up from all past seasons. The most important thing happens when you log in with any of these Eternal characters. A tab labeled Withdraw only appears in your stash. In it lies everything you earned during the past season, all items, runes, gems, and so on. Attention! In this tab, you can only withdraw items, you cannot put anything back. Gold earned in the season is automatically added to the gold you had in the Eternal Realm. Let me remind you, the gold cap is 100 billion. The same happens with resources, they are added to what you already had. If you plan to play your Eternal characters, you need to log into the game during the next season and clear out this tab. Move everything to your main stash or the inventory of your other characters. If you don't do this during the following season, then when the season after that starts, this temporary tab will simply disappear, and with it, all your legendary, unique, and mythic items will be lost. Wait! I talked earlier about items being destroyed in the Eternal Realm after a rework, so how does that work? Yes, that's right. In the 1.5 years that I personally have been playing, items in the Eternal Realm have been destroyed twice, and on April 28th, it will happen again. And in a little over a year, in 2027, when the next expansion comes out, items in the Eternal Realm will be zeroed out once more. Why even play in seasons? After hearing all that, many people ask what the point is. Why start over every 3 months if everything resets? Honestly, back when I was playing in Diablo 3, I only played seasons about 5 times. And even then, it was driven by the fact that Blizzard gave an extra stash tab for completing all chapters of the seasonal journey. Personally, I preferred the Eternal Realm. Why? Because at that time, the developers had introduced infinite Paragon. Well, conditionally infinite. We didn't know back then that the cap was 10,000, and we also didn't know that the pit cap was and would remain 150 forever. They quickly raised the Paragon cap to 20,000 after players reached it in a few days. But they never changed the Greater Rift cap. And the worst part of this story is that they stayed silent on the topic for about a year, even considering that in the season. Pay attention, in the season, 2 weeks after it started, the meta build was already running the maximum Greater Rift 150 in 2 minutes. Solo, you didn't miss here, and I didn't mix anything up. A new seasonal character 2 weeks after the season started was running the maximum available Greater Rift 150 in 2 minutes. That was a monk in one of the seasons in 2020 or 2021. And only after that did they officially announce that there would be no increase to the Greater Rift cap. So, dear viewers, it's hard for me to trust Blizzard, or rather, I'm too old and know how the world works well enough to trust anyone. They will do what and only what increases company profit. Ethics, conscience, or anything like that doesn't exist in the business world. What was I talking about? Right, the magic of seasons. Let me break it all down for you. Because the majority of players, about 80%, share this point of view. What is this magic of seasons? There is an opinion that starting from a clean slate gives everyone an equal chance for top spots on the leaderboard, which is complete and utter nonsense. I explained in detail what happens on the leaderboard in one of my videos. If you're interested, the hint is at the top right, go check it out. In short, if you are not a very experienced player with several thousand hours in the game, you will not reach the top of the ladder, not at the start and not at the end of the season. The only reason to play in seasons, and this is, I repeat, a valid reason for 80% of players, is that each season brings new mechanics, storylines, and quests that are not available in the Eternal Realm. The better you know the game, the easier and faster it will be for you to complete each new season. You level up faster, you put together your build faster, you complete the seasonal journey, and for half the players, that's it, the season is considered over. So an approach like, I did the seasonal journey, got my rewards, cleared pit 70, I'm good, is a perfectly valid one. I have nothing against it. Some people play a little longer, that's also okay. Everyone plays how they want and for as long as they want. Everyone has their own goals and objectives. I'm not arguing with anyone, and I'm not trying to impose my vision on anyone. But personally, I prefer to play in the Eternal Realm, but right now that's difficult for several reasons. First, currently there is no leaderboard there. Second, the Paragon cap of 300 makes playing in the Eternal Realm pointless due to the lack of a growth effect. Third, there is no point in perfecting multiple class builds if they will be reset by expansions and mechanic reworks. So, once expansions stop and systems stabilize, the Eternal Realm will make more sense. That will happen sooner or later. Until then, seasons are still worth playing. The main thing is that you don't build up illusions and look ahead with an understanding of what is what. I hope this video was useful for you and didn't upset you too much before the start of the new season. If the information helped, like the video and share it with friends. If you didn't like it, still leave a comment telling me how great I am or how not great I am. Thanks for watching. Bye.